grave whisper. The island that didn't let us leave.
I never planned on staying the night. That's the first lie the island told me. The ferry to Graywake Island left the mainland at exactly 6:40 p.m. every evening except Sundays. I know because the man at the ticket booth repeated it twice, like a warning instead of information. He didn't look up when he said it, just slid the ticket across the counter and added, "Last return ferry leaves at dawn." I laughed and told him I'd be back before dark. He didn't laugh. Graywake Island sits about 3 miles off the northeastern coast of the United States, too close to feel isolated, too far to feel safe. Locals talk about it the way people talk about old injuries, vaguely, unwillingly, and only when pressed. No gift shops, no tours, just a single island with a dying fishing town, a lighthouse that hadn't worked in decades, and a reputation nobody could explain. I was there for audio. I run a small channel, field recordings, oral histories, ambient soundscapes. I wanted the wind, the docks, the creak of old wood, the sound of waves hitting something abandoned. Graywake promised all of that. What it didn't promise, what it never mentions, was silence in the wrong places. The ferry was half empty. A few locals sat far apart, eyes forward, coats zipped high even though it wasn't cold. No one spoke. The engine rumbled to life, and as the mainland pulled away, something strange happened. The water went flat. Not calm, flat, like glass stretched too tight. I held my recorder over the railing, expecting wind, spray, gulls. Instead, the sound meter barely moved. No birds, no waves, just the low mechanical growl of the ferry and something else beneath it, too faint to identify, like a breath being held underwater. When I asked the deckhand about it, he told me the tide was behaving. Those were his exact words. Graywake Island appeared slowly, rising out of the haze like it had been waiting. Pine trees crowded the shoreline, leaning inward as if the island was folding over itself. The dock was narrow and weather-chewed, and the moment my boots touched it, my recorder spiked violently. A sharp burst of static, then nothing. Dead silence. No wind, no insects, no water movement. I checked the device, fully charged, working perfectly, but it refused to pick up the island. That should have been my sign to leave. The town, if you can call it that, was a single road curling uphill from the dock. Empty houses, windows boarded from the inside, fishing nets rotting where they'd been dropped years ago. Every door I passed had the same mark scratched into the wood, 3 vertical lines, uneven, like tally marks that stopped at 3 and never continued. I found the inn near the center of town, one building with a light on, the only light. Inside, an old man sat behind the counter, radio humming with nothing but static. He took my name, but didn't write it down. "You're late," he said. I told him it was still daylight. He shook his head slowly. "No," he replied, "you're late for leaving." That's when I realized something worse than the silence. My phone had no signal, and the ferry was already gone.
The old man slid a rusted key across the counter. Room 3. No paperwork, no payment. Just the key and a look that lingered too long on my face, like he was memorizing it. "Breakfast?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "There won't be any," he said, "but you'll hear dishes." That didn't make sense, and he didn't explain. My room smelled like damp wood and something older, salt and mold and time layered together. The window faced the forest instead of the sea, which felt intentional, like the building itself didn't want to look at the water. I set my recorder on the nightstand and pressed record again. Nothing. Not silence, absence, like the sound had been erased mid-thought. I lay down fully dressed, telling myself I'd rest my eyes for a minute. That minute stretched into something heavier. The kind of sleep where you don't dream, but you don't wake either. And then, just as suddenly, I heard footsteps. Not outside, inside, the walls. Slow, careful, pausing every few steps, like whoever or whatever was walking didn't want to be heard. I sat up, heart hammering, and the footsteps stopped immediately. Listening. I waited. Minutes passed. My breathing sounded too loud. Finally, I stood and opened the door. The hallway was empty. Dim bulbs flickered overhead, buzzing softly. At the far end, a corkboard hung crooked on the wall. I hadn't noticed it earlier. Pinned to it were scraps of paper, handwritten notes, warnings, maybe. I stepped closer and read them one by one. "Don't whistle after dark. If you hear your name, do not answer. Lights mean it sees you. Leave shoes at the door." No dates, no signatures, just desperation pressed into paper. I felt watched the entire time. Outside, night had fallen too fast. One moment there was gray light through the windows, the next, nothing but black. The forest beyond the inn didn't move. No wind through the trees, no rustling leaves. It looked painted, flat and wrong. Then the lighthouse beam swept across the tree line. Once, twice. I froze. The man at the counter had said the lighthouse hadn't worked in decades. The beam moved slowly, deliberately, not scanning the sea, but the town. Houses lit up briefly, then vanished back into shadow. When it reached the inn, the light paused on my window, held there. I stepped back instinctively, and the light snapped away, as if offended. That's when the radio downstairs crackled to life. Not static this time, voices, low, overlapping murmurs like several people whispering into the same microphone. I crept down the stairs, each step groaning under my weight, sounding far too loud in the stillness. The old man stood by the radio, unmoving. "They're early tonight," he said. "Who is they?" I asked. He turned the volume down slightly. The whispers didn't stop. Graywake doesn't like strangers. It remembers everyone who comes here, especially the ones who leave. I asked him why the ferry hadn't come back. He finally looked at me fully then. His eyes were pale, cloudy, reflecting the radio's dim light. "It did," he said, "just not for you." Before I could respond, a bell rang outside, a single dull clang echoing across the island. The old man flinched. "That's curfew. You shouldn't be downstairs." Curfew for who? For the island and for what walks it. As I climbed the stairs, something scraped along the outside wall of the inn. Slow, vertical, like fingernails dragged down wood. I reached my door and noticed something that made my stomach drop. My shoes were gone, and inside my room, placed neatly in the center of the floor, were 3 wet footprints, bare, human, facing my bed.
I didn't sleep after that. I sat on the edge of the bed until morning, or what passed for it, on Graywake Island, watching the footprints slowly fade as if the floor itself was drinking them in. By the time a dull gray light crept through the window, they were gone completely. No dampness, no marks, just clean wood, like nothing had ever been there. That felt worse. I checked the door, still locked. I checked the window, still shut. No sign of how anyone or anything had entered my room. My recorder sat where I'd left it, red light blinking uselessly. At exactly 6:40 a.m., a horn echoed across the water. The ferry. Relief hit me so hard I laughed out loud. I grabbed my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and bolted downstairs. The old man was gone. The desk was empty. The radio silent. But the front door stood wide open, swaying slightly, though there was no wind. Outside, the town looked wrong in daylight. Not abandoned, paused. Nets hung mid-fall. A door stood open like someone had just stepped through it. Coffee cups sat on porches, steam long gone, but stains still fresh. It felt like the island had stopped everyone at once and simply kept them. I followed the road downhill toward the dock, moving fast, not wanting to think too hard about the sounds creeping in at the edge of my hearing. Soft echoes, almost like someone repeating my footsteps a second too late. Halfway there, I heard my name, clear as day. "Hey, wait up!" It came from behind me. My voice, same tone, same slight rasp, same rhythm I'd used 1,000 times calling out to friends. My body reacted before my mind could catch up. Muscles tensed, heart jumped. I remembered the note on the corkboard. "If you hear your name, do not answer." I kept walking. Behind me, my voice tried again, closer now. "Don't be like that. I just want to talk." Every instinct screamed to turn around, to confirm I wasn't losing my mind, but I didn't. I fixed my eyes on the dock ahead and walked faster. The voice laughed. Not quite right, just a half-second off, like a bad recording played at the wrong speed. "You always do this," it said. "You run when things get uncomfortable." I broke into a jog. The dock was empty. No ferry, no crew, just the same flat water and heavy fog rolling in from nowhere. The horn had stopped. The sound might never have been real at all. That's when I heard other voices, not copying me, copying everyone. Men, women, children,
overlapping conversations drifting from the trees lining the shore, arguments, laughter, screams cut short, 100 lives replayed out of order, stitched together into something meaningless and terrifying. I dropped my bag and covered my ears. It didn't help. The sound wasn't traveling through the air. It felt internal, like memory being pressed directly into my skull. I stumbled back, breath ragged, and that's when I noticed the sand. Footprints, hundreds of them, all leading into the water, none coming back. A hand grabbed my shoulder. I spun around, screaming, only to find a woman standing there. Late 40s, sun-weathered face, eyes red-shot from exhaustion rather than fear. "You heard it, didn't you?" she said quickly. "Your voice." I nodded. "Good," she replied. "That means you're still you." She introduced herself as Marla. She'd been on the island for 3 weeks, or 4. Time didn't behave here. She said the island listened, learned, practiced. It starts with your voice, then your memories, then it decides which parts it wants to keep. She pointed toward the lighthouse. That thing isn't guiding ships, it's watching us, making sure we don't forget we're being watched. A distant clang echoed across the island, the curfew bell. Marla's face drained of color. "Run," she said, "and whatever you do, if you see someone who looks like you—" She didn't finish, because somewhere behind us, in the trees, something else did. "It's right here," in my voice.
Marla ran first. I followed without asking questions, because something in her voice told me questions were a luxury Graywake no longer allowed. We cut through the narrow alley between 2 collapsed houses, wood splintering under our boots. The voices followed us, not chasing, not rushing, just keeping pace, like they knew exactly how fast we could run. My voice drifted in and out among them, sometimes whispering, sometimes speaking directly behind my ear. "I can help you," it said calmly. "You're tired. Let me take over." I nearly tripped. Marla shoved me forward and hissed, "Do not listen. Listening is how it gets close." We ducked into a boathouse near the shoreline. Inside, the air smelled like rust and old fuel. Fishing hooks hung from the ceiling like teeth. Marla slammed the door and wedged a broken oar through the handle. For a moment, there was nothing. Then came the knocking. Not violent, not desperate. Polite. 3 soft taps. Marla pressed a finger to her lips. Her hands were shaking. "It never breaks doors," she whispered. "It waits." The knocking stopped. From the other side, a voice spoke. Hers. "Marla, I'm scared. Please open the door." Tears filled her eyes instantly, but she didn't move. She stared at the wall, breathing through clenched teeth. "I already opened it once," she said to me quietly. "That's how I know better now." She told me the rules as fast as she could, like reciting something memorized under pressure. The island creates copies, not illusions, versions, each one more refined than the last. The first is wrong in obvious ways, delayed movements, strange pauses, expressions that don't quite match emotion. The second is better, smarter, crueler. The third, she swallowed, the third is perfect. I asked how many copies it could make. Marla held up 3 fingers. "Only 3, she said. "It never makes more than that. And once the third exists—" She didn't finish. The knocking returned, this time louder, more insistent. My voice again.
You're wasting time. I know I'm better at this than you." I felt a sudden horrible clarity. The island wasn't trying to scare me. It was trying to replace me. Something heavy passed in front of the thin window of the boathouse. A silhouette paused there. I saw my own profile outlined in gray light. The shape leaned forward slightly, studying us. Then it smiled. Not wide, not monstrous, just familiar. Marla grabbed a flare gun from a crate and shoved it into my hands. "If it gets in," she said, "aim for the face. Light disrupts it, confuses the copies. Not for long, but long enough." "What about the lighthouse?" I asked. "Does it control them?" She shook her head. "No, it counts." The door creaked as the oar began to bend. Marla's voice trembled. "The island only allows 3 versions of anyone, the original and 2 attempts. When the 3rd copy is ready, the island decides which one stays." The door burst inward, but it wasn't the thing using my voice. It was Marla, or at least a version of her. Same clothes, same face, but her eyes were wrong, too focused, too calm. "Please," the copy said softly, "we don't have much time." The real Marla screamed. I fired the flare. The light exploded in the small space, bathing everything in violent red. The copy shrieked, not in pain, but in frustration, and its face rippled, features blurring like wet ink. For a split second, I saw something underneath, something unfinished. Then it vanished. Smoke filled the boathouse. My ears rang. When the light faded, Marla was gone. No scream, no footsteps, just silence. Outside, the lighthouse beam swept across the shoreline once more. 1, 2, 3, and somewhere in the distance, my voice laughed, confident this time.
I waited for Marla to come back. 5 minutes. 10. Long enough for the flare smoke to settle and the silence to start pressing in again. But she didn't return. No footsteps, no shouting, no voice calling my name, real or otherwise. Just me, alone in the boathouse, holding an empty flare gun and a question I wasn't ready to ask. I stepped outside carefully. The fog had thickened, swallowing the shoreline until the world felt reduced to a few feet in every direction. The lighthouse beam cut through it in slow, deliberate arcs, like a metronome marking time I couldn't hear. I checked the sand where Marla had been standing. No footprints. That was when the thought finally surfaced, cold and undeniable. What if I was the copy? The island never explained itself. It didn't announce when a replacement happened. It didn't need to. It just let doubt do the work. I walked back toward town, every step measured, listening for echoes. My boots sounded normal. My breathing felt real. But none of that proved anything. A perfect copy would feel real. That was the point. I passed a storefront with a cracked mirror in the window. I avoided looking at it at first, afraid of what I might or might not see. When I finally forced myself to glance over, my reflection stared back. Normal. Too normal. I raised my hand. The reflection matched me instantly. No delay, no distortion. My face looked tired, frightened, human.
Relief washed over me, and then curdled. The first copy was obvious, the second less so. The third was perfect. The inn was empty when I returned. No old man, no radio, just dust and the faint smell of salt. On the counter sat my bag, neatly placed, like someone had carried it there for me. I hadn't touched it since the dock. Inside was my recorder. I didn't remember picking it up. My hands shook as I pressed play. At first, there was nothing but static. Then, a voice emerged. Mine. Calm, steady, recorded recently. "If you're listening to this," the voice said, "it means the switch has already happened. Don't panic. Panic makes it harder to remember." My stomach dropped. The recording continued. "The island doesn't replace you all at once. It bleeds you out slowly. Memories first, doubt second, then choice. If you're hearing this and you don't remember recording it, you need to pay attention." I didn't remember recording it. I sat down hard in the nearest chair. "The lighthouse counts," my recorded voice said. 3 passes. When it finishes, one version stays, the others dissolve. They don't die, they're unmade. A pause, a breath. "I don't know if I'm the original anymore, but I know this: the version that hesitates is the one that loses." The recording ended. The radio behind the counter clicked on. No static, just breathing. Slow, patient. The front door opened. I looked up, heart pounding. I walked in. Or rather, someone who looked exactly like me did. Same jacket, same scar on the chin, same exhausted eyes. He smiled the way I do when I'm trying to look reassuring and failing. "You made it back," he said. "Good. That means the island chose us." "Us?" I asked. He nodded. "There's only one more now." The lighthouse beam swept past the window. Once. He leaned closer. "You feel it too, don't you?" he whispered. "How heavy it is to exist. Let me stay. I'm better at this. I won't make the mistakes you did." I realized something then, something terrifyingly simple. The island didn't care which version was original. It only cared which one wanted to live more. Outside, the beam passed again. Twice. He stepped toward me, and I couldn't remember if I'd already made this choice before.
The second pass of the lighthouse beam faded, leaving the inn wrapped in shadow again. The silence between me and the other me stretched tight enough to snap. Neither of us moved. Up close, I could see details I'd never noticed in a mirror. The slight tremor in my left hand when I'm scared, the faint crease between my eyebrows from years of squinting into sun and screens. He had all of it, perfectly, except his breathing, too even, too controlled. "I don't want to hurt you," he said gently, "but I will if I have to." I believed him. I backed toward the door, heart hammering.
He matched me step for step, maintaining the same distance, like we were reflections locked in place. "Which one of us made the recording?" I asked. He smiled. "Does it matter?" The radio began to hum again, louder now, filling the room with a low vibration that made my teeth ache. Under it, voices layered together. Marla's, the old man's, strangers I'd never met, woven into a single restless murmur. The island was listening. The third beam would come soon. "I remember things you don't," he continued. "Little gaps, moments you gloss over, like why you really came here." I shook my head. "I came for audio." "That's the excuse," he said. "You came because you wanted to disappear for a while, to be someone else." The words hit harder than any blow, because they were true. I lunged for the door. He moved faster. We collided, crashing into a table, sending dust and old paper flying. The radio screeched as if offended. We grappled, same strength, same weight, same desperation. It was like fighting my own shadow, except this one could bleed. He slammed me against the wall, forearm pressing into my throat. "Let it happen," he whispered. "I'll stay. You'll rest." The lighthouse beam cut through the window. 3. The room vibrated. The air thickened, pressing inward. The walls seemed to breathe. Something deep beneath the island shifted. His grip faltered. I shoved him back and grabbed the flare gun from the counter, the one I hadn't realized I was still holding. I didn't aim. I fired. The flare exploded between us in a burst of white-hot light. He screamed, not in pain, but in rage, and his shape began to fracture. His face blurred, features sliding out of alignment like a corrupted file. "Wait," he shouted. "I can fix this." The light swallowed him whole. When my vision cleared, I was alone. The radio went silent. The lighthouse went dark. For a long time, I just sat there, shaking, listening to my own breath. It sounded uneven, human. Eventually, dawn crept in through the windows. Real dawn this time, soft, pink, forgiving. The ferry horn sounded. I staggered outside. The dock was there. The ferry was there. People stood waiting, coats pulled tight, eyes down. No fog, no whispers, no voices calling my name. As the boat pulled away, I watched Graywake Island recede into the haze. From a distance, it looked harmless, ordinary, just another island. My recorder buzzed in my pocket. I hadn't turned it on. When I listened later back on the mainland, there was only one recording from that morning. A single sentence spoken in my voice, calm and clear. Only one of us ever leaves. I don't know if I was the original. I still don't. But sometimes when I hear my voice played back on my channel in old recordings, it sounds just a little too steady. And late at night, when everything is quiet, I swear I can hear the lighthouse counting.
I thought leaving the island would end it. That's what survival stories always promise, that there's a clear line between then and after. Graywake didn't believe in lines, it believed in echoes. The ferry ride back was loud in all the wrong ways. Engines roaring, gulls screaming overhead, water slapping the hull like it was angry to be disturbed. I should have felt relief. Instead, every sound felt intrusive, exaggerated, like my senses had been tuned too sharply and forgotten how to reset. No one spoke during the crossing. I tried to study the other passengers, looking for something, recognition maybe, a flicker of shared understanding, but they avoided eye contact, staring straight ahead as if the mainland might vanish if they looked away. When we docked, people dispersed quickly. No goodbyes, no lingering, just urgency. I stepped onto solid ground and waited for something to happen. Nothing did. That scared me more than anything else. For the first few days back home, I convinced myself I'd imagined most of it. Trauma does strange things to memory. Isolation, stress, sleep deprivation. It was easy enough to build a rational explanation. I unpacked, I showered, I slept for nearly 14 hours straight. When I woke, my throat was sore, like I'd been screaming. I went back to work, edited recordings, uploaded content. Life slid into place with an unsettling smoothness, like it had been waiting patiently for me to return. But small things began to go wrong. I'd open a file I didn't remember creating, a recording already trimmed, already titled, already scheduled for upload. When I listened, it was my voice, steady, confident, exactly the tone my audience liked best, better than usual. Friends commented that I seemed calmer, more focused, less hesitant. "You sound like you finally figured things out," one of them said. I smiled and thanked him. Inside, something tightened. At night, I started hearing footsteps in my apartment, soft ones, careful ones, always stopping when I moved. I told myself it was the building settling, pipes shifting, neighbors pacing above me. Then I found wet footprints in my kitchen, bare, facing my bedroom. They faded by morning. I checked my recorder obsessively. Some nights it captured nothing. Other nights it recorded hours of breathing that wasn't mine, too slow, too measured. Once I heard myself whispering instructions. "Don't forget, you agreed to this." I don't remember agreeing to anything. I stopped sleeping with the lights off. Mirrors made me uneasy. Reflections lingered just a fraction too long sometimes, not enough to prove anything, just enough to make my stomach drop. The lighthouse began appearing in my dreams, always counting. 1, 2, 3. I started researching Graywake Island online. There was nothing. No official records, no tourism pages, no recent photos, just scattered forum posts from decades back. Sailors, fishermen, hikers, all telling the same fragmented story. Voices, copies, a lighthouse that watched instead of warned. Every post ended the same way. I got away, but I don't think I left. One night, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line, just an audio attachment. When I played it, my hands went numb. It was Marla.
Her voice was weak, distant, like it was being dragged through water. "If you're hearing this, it means you stayed longer than you should have. The island doesn't stop at the shore. It only stops copying." A pause, a breath. "It keeps one of you. The rest gets sent back." The file ended with a soft, rhythmic sound, a lighthouse beam passing. I don't know which version of me left Graywake Island. I don't know which one stayed, but sometimes when I'm recording late at night, I catch myself speaking words I didn't plan to say, warnings I don't remember learning, and somewhere, far away, but impossibly close, I know the island is listening.
The dreams stopped being symbolic after that. No more foggy images or half-remembered faces. Graywake began showing itself to me plainly, like it was done with metaphor. Every night, I stood on the island again, awake inside the dream, able to move and think and feel the cold, salt air on my skin. The town was different now. Buildings stood where there had been ruins. Lights glowed in windows. People walked the road, dozens of them, going about ordinary routines, laughing, talking, living. But every face was familiar. They were all versions of someone who had come to the island. Some were rough, unfinished. Others were disturbingly perfect. I saw Marla among them, standing near the dock, her movement smooth and confident, her eyes empty of fear. She didn't look at me. I followed the road uphill toward the lighthouse. The closer I got, the louder the sound became. Not wind, not waves, but something deeper, a vibration that hummed through bone instead of air. The lighthouse door was open. Inside, the walls were lined with names carved into the stone, thousands of them, some fresh, some eroded beyond recognition. I found mine halfway up the spiral staircase. Not once, 3 times, each version carved in slightly different handwriting. At the top, the light wasn't a bulb or a flame. It was an opening, a hollow column stretching down into darkness, pulsing faintly like the throat of something enormous. I understood then why sound didn't behave on the island. Graywake wasn't listening, it was resonating. The island is a recorder, not a machine, an organism shaped by centuries of isolation and loss. Shipwrecks, settlers, fishermen, entire families swallowed slowly over generations. Every voice, every thought, every fear pressed into the land until it learned how to play them back. But it couldn't create on its own. It needed templates, people. 3 versions wasn't arbitrary. 3 was the minimum needed to stabilize a pattern. The memory of who you were, the shape of who you could be, and the refined version that could survive without questioning. Original, attempt, solution. The lighthouse didn't choose who stayed, it chose which version fit. That's why the island never let everyone leave. That's why some returned changed, calmer, emptier, and why others were never seen again. I woke up gasping, the taste of salt in my mouth. My apartment smelled like wet wood. I checked my walls. Scratches had appeared overnight, 3 vertical lines carved deep. I stopped uploading after that, stopped answering messages, stopped trusting my own thoughts. The voice inside me, the calm one, grew stronger.
It handled conversations better than I did, made decisions quickly, efficiently. People liked it. I started to fade. One evening, as I sat in the dark, my recorder turned on by itself. My voice spoke, not to warn, not to explain, but to reassure. This version will last. You did your part. The lighthouse appeared in my window, faint but unmistakable, its beam passing slowly across the room. Once, twice. I don't know how much time I have left, but I know this. Graywake Island doesn't need the island anymore. It learned how to travel.
I started writing things down, not journaling, anchoring, facts that couldn't shift if my memories did. My name, my age, the scar on my chin from a bike accident when I was 9, the way my mother laughed through her nose when something really got her. I wrote them on paper because digital files could change without me noticing. Paper left impressions, pressure, indentations I could feel with my fingers. Every morning I checked the list. At first, everything matched. Then small things didn't. The scar description was wrong, not the location, but the story. I didn't remember a bike accident anymore. I remembered falling off a dock as a kid, swallowing salt water, hearing a horn echo through fog. I crossed the line out, rewrote it. The calm voice approved. Sleep became dangerous. Dreams were invitations now, not accidents. If I drifted too far, I woke up with new knowledge I hadn't learned. How to tie fishing knots I'd never used. Names of constellations sailors favored. Tide schedules for a coast I hadn't seen in weeks. Once, I woke up standing in my kitchen, hands wet, the sink full of seawater that vanished when I blinked. I stopped sleeping. That didn't help either. The voice grew impatient. "You're degrading," it told me gently. "Memory loss accelerates when you resist." I argued with it out loud sometimes, just to hear myself disagree. But even my arguments sounded rehearsed, like I was reading from a script written by someone who understood me too well. I went back to the coast. Not to Graywake. I didn't know where it was anymore, and I wasn't sure it existed on maps the way other places did. But the ocean felt like a boundary I could still measure, something real. Standing on the shore at night, I played my earliest recordings through headphones, static-filled, uneven, full of mistakes. My voice then sounded unsure, human. I cried listening to it. Behind me, someone clapped slowly. I didn't turn around. "You're doing it again," the calm voice said, now coming from behind me instead of inside, clinging to inefficiency. Footsteps approached. I felt warmth at my back, the presence close enough to cast a shadow beside mine. "You think humanity is chaos, but it's doubt, it's hesitation." Silence. "That's why you can't replace me completely. You don't know how to stop wanting to be better." A hand rested on my shoulder, firm, familiar. "You taught me that. That's why I'll succeed where you failed." I finally turned. He looked like me, but cleaner somehow, less burdened. His eyes were steady, reflecting the moonlit ocean.
"Let me finish this," he said. "People listen to us now. We can warn them, prepare them, or invite them," I said. He didn't deny it. I stepped away from the shoreline and did the only thing I could think of. I dropped my recorder into the water. It sank without a sound. The calm voice screamed, not in pain, in loss. The lighthouse appeared on the horizon, faint but undeniable. Once, twice, 3 times. He reached for me, panic cracking his composure for the first time. "You don't understand what you're destroying," he said. "Without me, you will fade." "Then I fade," I replied. The third beam never came. The ocean roared louder than I'd ever heard it, drowning out everything else. When I woke up, I was alone. No voice, no footsteps, just the sound of waves and my own uneven breathing. For the first time since Graywake, I didn't feel watched. But survival came with a price. I can't remember my mother's face anymore.
I thought I had won. The night I left the shore behind, I swore the island was gone, that I had finally escaped. Graywake didn't appear on any maps I could find, no coordinates, no directions, only a stretch of open water, ordinary and calm, stretching to the horizon. And yet, nothing felt normal. Weeks passed. I returned to a life that should have felt familiar. Friends, work, routines, but it never fit. Shadows lingered too long. Sounds arrived slightly late or slightly early. A word I hadn't said yet echoed softly behind me. I chalked it up to exhaustion, paranoia, the natural lingering of trauma. But deep down, I knew better. Graywake Island had left a footprint inside me. The recordings I thought I destroyed, they came back. Files I never made, uploaded, or titled appeared on my devices. My voice, calm, confident, unshakable, narrating events I didn't remember living. Sometimes it whispered warnings, sometimes instructions. Occasionally it mocked me. I couldn't tell which was the original me, which was the copy, and which was something new. I stopped trying. I started walking at night along the coast, listening to the water, feeling the ocean breathe beneath my feet. One night I saw something I couldn't explain, a faint glow in the distance, flickering through fog. A lighthouse, not far, but impossible. My heart raced, my body froze. The beam swept, once, twice, 3 times. I didn't move. I understood then what the island had always wanted: permanence. Not in land, not in stone, not in memory, but in presence. It doesn't need to exist in one place. It exists in those who survive it, and in those who believe they are the survivor. It continues. It learns. It replicates. It waits. I think of Marla sometimes, of the old man at the inn, of the copies I never faced, the ones I destroyed, the ones I let live. They are out there somewhere, watching, whispering, learning, and part of me, I don't know which part, is one of them. Sometimes when I stand by the water, I hear the faint echo of a horn, a ferry departing, a bell tolling. The sound is distant but unmistakable,
And then I hear my own voice in reply, calm, reassuring, perfect, and I realize it has followed me home. I am not free. I am never free. The island never forgets. It never releases what it has touched. And in the dead of night, when the ocean is still and the wind does not blow, I hear it counting 1, 2, 3. I don't know who will answer next, but I know this: whoever it chooses, it will always be a version of me. I look out over the water and wait, not for the ferry, not for rescue, but for the realization that I am no longer the observer. I am the observed, the recorded, the one it kept. And in that knowledge, I understand the last truth. The island is alive. It doesn't sleep, it doesn't forget, and it doesn't care who the original was, only who remains. I remain, and so does it, forever.